service for the day. Thank you so much for doing this for us. It's going to be very fun. And I hope you enjoy it as much as you do. I am Elise Holland. This is...
My name is Clarissa Cuellar.
I'm Crystal Lee.
I am Shadaman Gurbus.
And today we would just be asking you a bunch of questions about your service in the war and how you participated in it. We're going to start off by asking which war did you serve in, where did you serve, and how did it impact you?
Okay, answer.
Okay,
Sorry, would you like me
when I served and where I served,
Where did you serve?
Where?
I served in the United States Navy in the amphibious branch of the Navy. I served in the South Pacific and Asiatic Pacific. And we made the occupation of Japan after they surrendered. And then we went to China with some troops. And I went up the Yangtze River. And we pretty well covered the South Pacific. And all of the chains of islands, just about all of them out in the South Pacific, we covered them. I was aboard an APA, amphibious personnel attack ship, and we carried 1,200 troops and all their equipment. We pretty well covered the South Pacific, all the way down to Australia, New Guinea, Solomons, New Hebrides, all over the South Pacific and Asiatic Pacific.
Okay, thank you. Which war did you serve in?
What was that?
Which
When?
war did you serve in?
I didn't understand.
Which war did you serve in?
Where did you serve in the U.S. Navy?
Where?
The service.
In the Navy, I served aboard ship. I went through boot camp at San Diego, California, and I took amphibious training out at Coronado Island. And then I got on the ship, we boarded the ship at Astoria, Oregon, and went to the South Pacific. So I served on the APA 232, the USS San Saba.
Thank you. Which city do you currently reside in?
Where do you live?
What?
Where do you live? Where do you live?
Where did I live then?
No, now.
Now?
Now, yes.
Now I live in San Antonio, Texas.
Okay, thank you. Now, my interviewers will begin to ask a few questions to you about your service in the war and how it impacted you.
How did it impact?
Repeat that.
How did it impact you?
Speak up.
How did it impact you?
How did being in service impact me? Well, I enlisted in the Navy when I was 17. And I believe I would have enlisted when I was 16 if I could have got by with it, but I wasn't allowed to because of my parents, grandparents. But I had friends that enlisted when they were 16, and I enlisted when I was 17 because I wanted to get out to the Navy and get to the South Pacific and do what I could to help win the war.
Okay, Mr. John, I have a few questions for you. Growing up, where were you born?
Where was I born?
Yes.
I was born in Pineland, Texas.
Wow. And can you describe that town? What was it like growing up in that city?
Well, I was born in Thailand, but as a child, a young child, a very young child, we moved to northeast Texas, north of Mineola on a farm. And I was raised on that farm until I was 10 years old. And we moved into town, into Mineola, when I was 10 years old, off the farm.
Wow, that's interesting. And growing up as a child, did you ever consider yourself being a soldier, or what job did you want to do when you grew up?
Well, uh, and in those days, the times were just a little different. Uh, the Depression, the Great Depression came in 1929 when there was a crash on Wall Street, and we went into a depression, and we stayed in that depression through 1929 and through the 30s, and we stayed in that depression until we got into the war when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor December 7th, 1941. And mostly growing up on a farm, we had no running water, no electricity, no telephone, no gas. But we had a big lake. We dug this lake in 1931 and had a place to fish and swim, and I had a horse, and I really enjoyed living on the farm.
Wow, I can imagine that must have been very difficult for you and your family. Do you have any siblings? Did any of your siblings serve in the war as well?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. You're just a single child growing up?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Wow. Let's see. What were some of your favorite hobbies growing up?
Favorite hobbies?
Mm-hmm.
Well, on the farm, there was always something to do.
Right.
Not like the city life. I could fish or swim or hunt or ride my horse and things like that on the farm. But when we moved into town, it seemed there was always the depression was hanging on around our shoulders at that time, and the threat of war loomed over us. Adolf Hitler was forming the Third Reich in Germany, and the Japanese were getting ready to bomb Pearl Harbor. And life was a little different in town. For instance, when Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, we came into a state of war with them, and also we declared war on Germany. And things were rationed then. The meat was rationed, sugar was rationed, gasoline was rationed, and almost all the things that we use daily were rationed, so we could keep the troops well equipped.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What were some of the major concerns you had after realizing you were going to serve for the war? Were you nervous or were you afraid?
Well, about being nervous and afraid, there was a saying in those days, for instance, in the South Pacific, if a man said he wasn't afraid, he was either a liar or crazy. And we just kind of lived with fear and overcame it.
That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing.
What was that?
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay, so for when you're in the boot camp, what was that like? Can you let
What
me
was
know
boot
how
camp
boot
like?
camp was
What?
like?
What's boot camp like? Boot camp. What was it like? Boot camp.
What was boot camp like?
Yeah.
Well, boot camp was pretty rough. We learned discipline, among other things, and everyone dressed alike. We had the same blue jeans, same dungaree shirt, same uniform, same shoes. We all got a burr cut the day we entered boot camp, and we were divided into companies. And we marched everywhere we went on that boot camp on the Naval Training Station there in San Diego. And we had to stand watch also on and off. And we trained some in whale boats. We trained on guns. And I don't know why, but we learned how to throw a hand grenade. And at first, we trained in first aid and also in gas protection. We learned to use a gas mask, and among many other things. But above all, we learned discipline.
So how long did it take you adapt to the military style?
How long did it take to adapt to military?
How long did it take for boot camp?
To adapt to the lifestyle?
To adapt to lifestyle.
After I got out of service,
During serving.
during the service,
Yes.
During boot camp.
well, we had to adapt. There wasn't any other way to get around it. We learned to march together. We learned to go to class together. We adapted, and that was part of the discipline. They told us there are 3 ways to do things: the right way, the wrong way, and the Navy way. And we're going to do things the Navy way, which we did. And that was just part of adapting. You had to obey orders and learn discipline.
Oh, okay.
What would happen if somebody didn't follow orders? What kind of precautions would happen?
What would happen if someone disobeyed?
If what?
If someone disobeyed?
If you disobeyed an order,
Yes, sir.
it depended on where you were. On boot camp, there were several different ways, but in boot camp, I don't know of anyone that disobeyed an order. We were afraid to disobey an order.
Right.
But overseas, if you disobeyed an order, you could be shot
Wow.
if you're overseas and you disobeyed an order. But the other punishment was do brig time on bread and water, or do extra duty, hard work, and things of that nature. But there was very little of that, very little disobedience.
That's good.
Okay. Were you able to write or call your family?
Were you able to write home?
Yes, but our mail was censored. We would write a letter and put the letter in an envelope, and we didn't seal it. But there was a group of men that read the letters, and if there's anything in those letters that would harm the war effort or give away secrets, they would black it out. So that's the way we had to write.
Could you call home?
But so when we hit port in the States, from time to time we would come to pick up supplies there and to Pearl Harbor, and we were able to call home when we hit the States for a few days.
Okay. How did you deal with the stress?
How did you deal with the stress?
How did I deal with the stress?
Yeah.
Well, you just dealt with it.
Did
you
it
just
make you have a lot
Kind
of
of
friends?
ignored it.
Did you have a lot of friends to talk to?
Did you have a lot of friends to talk to?
Well, they were known as shipmates. And on our ship we had, 400 men or so, and they're divided into two groups, the boat group, the amphibious, and the ship's crew. And you learned practically everybody's name on the ship because you lived in those quarters aboard the ship for a year and a half, a little over a year and a half, and you learn to know people, where they're from, about their girlfriends, about their parents, about where they lived, and where they were from, you know. And yes, but everybody was friendly. You didn't want any enemies over there, you know, in the South Pacific. You didn't want any enemies on board ship.
Is there anything in particular during the war that stands out to you that you'd like to talk about?
Anything particular?
Anything particular?
During the war?
Well, yes, there's one thing in particular. We were on our way to Manila in the Philippines. And one day around noon, we were attacked by several submarines, which fired on us, and we had a destroyer escort with us who I think they sunk one of the subs, and we outran the others, but we got through that. But that submarine attack made an impression on me, and it came, the submarine attack came the day after the USS Indianapolis was sunk 50 miles away from where we were, and we didn't receive one word SOS, not word for help or anything. We didn't know about the Indianapolis being sunk until we reached Manila in the Philippines, and we learned of it. And had we known it, we could have been a lot of help to them for the crew that was sunk in the Indianapolis.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Irwin. You said you volunteered the war during the World War II.
World War II.
What was motivated
Yeah.
What was motivated you to volunteer?
What motivated you to go?
What motivated me?
Yes.
Well, we had a unprovoked attack on Pearl Harbor, December the 7th, 1941. And we really weren't too prepared for war, but we got prepared real quick. And what motivated me was we needed to defeat the Japanese and we needed to defeat the Germans. So we worked hard at that. That's what motivated me to win the war, so that we can remain a free nation.
Also, I would like to ask, how were you received by your family and community after the war?
After the war, how were you received? After the war, how were you received?
After the war, how were we received? Well, we didn't get back to the States until several months after the war ended. When they dropped the atom bomb, that ended the war right there. The Japanese gave up after a few days negotiation after we dropped the atom bomb. And we were told that we were fixing to make the occupation or invasion of Japan 2 weeks after they dropped the bomb. But when they dropped the bomb, that eliminated the invasion. So we made the occupation, and we spent time then transporting troops in the islands in the South Pacific, and made a trip to China. And we didn't get back to the States until several months after the war ended. So we weren't accepted like the troops were that were here when the war ended. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Irwin, after the war, how has your military service impacted your feelings about war and the military service in general?
How has it impacted your thoughts about war?
Well, there's been a saying that, war's hell, and there always have been wars, and I guess we'll always have wars, but I wish there was some other way to settle differences rather than get the whole world into the war. In World War II, the whole world was involved in that war. All the way around the globe, every country was involved in that war. But we're going to have wars. We just had to deal with it. Everybody was, what you might say, very patriotic about it. All of our friends, including myself, we enlisted in the Navy. Some of my friends enlisted in the Marines. We all wanted to do our share.
Mr. Irwin, my last question is, what message would you like to leave for future generations who will hear this interview? If so, what is that?
A message for future generations.
Well, the message for future generations about war in these are,
Yes.
is that right?
Yes, please.
Well, as you know, since World War II, that was supposed to have been the war to end the wars, but there came the Korean conflict, that was a war. There came the Vietnam conflict, which that was a long drawn out war. Now they're having problems over in the East, Near East, having problems with communism, and there's just a lot of trouble all around. And I would say that be prepared, have this country prepared really, really strong in the armed forces, the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, really be prepared.
My other question to you, I know you said previously that you had friends that served as Marines. What made you choose to want to serve for the Navy?
What made me choose the Navy?
Yes.
Well, I sure didn't want to go in the Army.
Yeah.
They had a hard time, those guys did. They ate hardtack and they ate K rations, and they were on the ground, fighting on the ground and in the jungle and in the mountains. And the Navy, you had a place to live on a ship where you could have 3 meals a day and a place to shower and a bunk to sleep in, and a little different arrangement than the Army. The Army boys had a hard time.
Yeah.
We gotta hand it to them.
And the Marines.
So that's why I picked the Navy. I just rather live on a ship than be a part of the amphibious force of the Navy and then be in the Army and have to fight on the ground.
I have a question for you. Do you keep up with any of your friends? Or do you talk to any of from the military still, or?
Well, yes, in times past, I did. But now at my age, most of them are gone on. They're dead. A lot of my high school friends of my age, a lot of them are dead. But at one time, I did keep up with it with these fellas. We had a ship's reunion every year in times past. But as the fellas got older, it was hard for them to travel because we'd have the reunion in different places, like in Washington and in Florida and in Texas. It became harder, and the older the fellas get, it became harder for them to travel. So we don't have those anymore, and I really don't hear from any of my Navy buddies anymore.
I have a question to ask for you. If there was one thing that stuck out to you the most throughout your entire service, what would that be?
What would be the one thing in the whole service that would stick out to you?
One thing in the service that would stick out, well, being able to serve aboard a ship in the South Pacific and Asiatic Pacific, that would be the main thing. But I think as a result of all that, I got a piece of paper. It's called a discharge. And one of the sentences in that discharge said that this certificate is issued as a testimony of obedience and fidelity. And I like that.
Were you ever, did you ever catch yourself becoming seasick while on the San Saba?
Yes.
What was that like?
Well, that's pretty rough. There's nothing you can do for seasickness except just throw up everything you have in you. The first time I was seasick, we had just gone aboard ship up in Astoria, Oregon, and we went up to Seattle to load ammunition, and we came out Puget Sound. And Puget Sound had swells, big, heavy swells that you rode, just those swells. And My first watch was in the crow's nest. It's on top of a long, high iron, high iron post that had a cage on top of it, which was called the crow's nest. And I stood my first watch there, and those swells caused that tall pole to rock back and forth, and I got so sick that I thought I was going to just jump out of that crow's nest.
Oh no.
Really seasick.
Oh, God.
But then again, when we left the States to head to Pearl Harbor and Hawaiian Islands, 3 or 4 days out, the seas were always rough. And we had really rough seas, and we had a full load of ammunition, and the seas were rough, and the ship was rolling, and I got seasick again. But that was the last time. And you know, the tough thing about getting seasick was that some of the older fellows that had been in the Navy for years and years, they would ask you, how would you like to have some oysters, or raw oysters? How would you like to have some bananas? And that just didn't go well at all with seasickness.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I would like to thank you for sharing your stories with us and generations to come, and your time and your cooperation, Mr. Erwin. I wish you personally my best.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you for your service. It's very honorable.
Thank you very much. Before we cut this interview short,
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. I'm glad to talk to you.
do you have anything else you would like to say about your service before we cut this interview?
What?
Anything else you want to say, particular?
Well, I guess not. I'm just glad that I made it through, and I'm glad I enlisted, and I'm glad I served. I had friends that didn't make it. They were killed, one at Okinawa and other places, but I'm glad that I made it through, and if I had to do it over again, I'd do it. And I thank you very much for allowing me to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
okay, Lise.